Welcome to day 12 of the Fall 2025 Web Development Technologies course. I'm Jim Kaufman with Rankin Technical College. So today we're going to go over Chapter 6, which is the Responsive Web Design Part 2, Designing for Tablet and Desktop Devices. So a lot of this Chapter 6 is about using media queries. And we looked at that a little bit yesterday, but we're going to look at that a little bit more today. So what a media query does, it detects the media type and capabilities of the device that the browser is running on, and it applies styles that work well for the situation based on the information provided. Okay. So what it can do, and I know I demonstrated this a little bit yesterday, you can, based on that media, uh, based on using a media query, you can apply certain styles. You can move things to different places on the screen. You could add padding. You can make something bigger, make something smaller. You can actually hide things so it's not there at all. Change colors, etc. You can pretty much do anything in there. And a lot of times you don't want to make drastic changes. Really that's not the purpose of it, just to do that, to move things around for fun or to make it look a lot different. It's really much more for just making sure that as far as the user experience, so that if they're using one device, that it's very aesthetically pleasing. It looks good on the screen, right? And they can do what they need to do on your website. So there's different ways to use media queries. One, you can actually use right in your link for your CSS. You can actually add some things it will use that style sheet in certain circumstances. And also, kind of what I showed yesterday, and what I'm going to actually do a little bit more today is actually using. You can have media queries directly in your CSS, and I'll show you that as well. But here's an example where you've got basically a styles CSS file, and you're doing, say, so this is for media screen. If your media is screen, then it will use this styles.css. Okay. Also, there's, on a web page, you can actually print a web page. So you can do, and I'll show. I have an example of this, and we'll see how that works. So, probably not used as much as it used to, printing a website, but people still do it, or maybe print out a page of things here and there. It's very beneficial to have your formatting a certain way, so it's very print friendly. Okay. Here in this situation, the second one here, it's actually if your media is print. So basically, it detects that, hey, you're trying to print. It knows you're trying to print, and it says, okay, let's use this printing, this special CSS, right? Now that's one way to do it. The other way is, like I said, obviously you can do it right within your code, and I'll show that here in a little bit, but we're going to still look a little bit more. So also we have with the idea of breakpoints, right? And so a breakpoint is basically a screen size, and when it reaches that screen size, it's going to change some things, right? It's going to, it's based on a certain screen size. Um, so basically what happens are breakpoints where the different styles are applied to the web page to cause it to change in a way that makes it easier to read or navigate a particular viewport. So these are commonly used, and this is kind of change. There's not a one exact thing. These are common viewpoints. Breakpoints, viewport breakpoints, but I've seen others as well that are kind of a little bit different than this. But this is just saying, a smartphone is going to be between like 320 and 480, and then a larger one's going to be between 481 and 768. Okay, including tablets, and then tablets in the landscape orientation. And laptops and small desktops from 769 up to 1279, And then large desktop monitors, basically you're just saying anything greater than 1280, right? So media queries can use a logical expressions also to test whether a viewport has reached a particular breakpoint. It includes the name of the media query, feature, characteristic of the environment, and a breakpoint value to be tested. If the logical expression evaluates to true, the media query applies the styles that follow. So let's take a look at this. So here you've got an example. And I haven't done this probably as much. This is maybe a little bit newer. I've done a lot of just doing the media queries right in the CSS. But I do like this, and this is probably a better solution in a lot of cases to have a separate CSS for like tablets. So in this case, for this styles tablet.css to be used, right? Your media screen, it has to be a type of screen. So this could be screen, or this could be print, or this could be all. Okay. And then so in this case, this is one where, you're basically using a tablet. So this is going to be a screen situation. And then you're saying, so if the minimum width is 481 and the max width is 768, go ahead and use this. So anything less than 481 or anything greater than 768, this will not be applied to the HTML. Okay. So this code directs the browser to apply the styles tablet style sheet in the CSS folder when screens have a viewport between those two numbers. Okay. So that's a logical, and this is an important concept as far as from our programming too. You're going to use you're going to learn lots of logical operators, ands, ors, okay? And there's different variations of that you'll learn as we continue in this course and the other courses in the program. So when testing for minimum and max widths, the word and separates each part of the media attribute value. Okay. Pretty straightforward, I think. Okay. Then the other way to implement media queries is to code them directly into a single CSS file using the @media rule. And the most common types are screen, print, and all. So sometimes maybe if you got a real basic page of text, there's really nothing that needs to change for print. You may just say, I want for print fine, screen and print, and all of them are fine. Nothing needs to change. You just use all, right? But if the screen's going to be a lot different than the print, then you're going to want to do something separate. In most cases, that's kind of going to be the scenario where you're going to want to have it set up differently for print, right? So here's some different media query expressions using max and min values, max width and min width. And basically it's the width of the viewport in pixels. Here we're using pixels, right? Max resolution and min resolution, that's the resolution of the output device. Dots per inch, dots per centimeter, okay? Obviously you have to have a lot of knowledge about what to put there. Max width and min width is probably the most common to use, okay? But then also there's this max height and a min height of the viewport in pixels, and also orientation, the orientation of the device, right? Landscape or portrait, it's going to look different, right? Them are all options. So adding media queries to an external style sheet. So the whole mobile first strategy is, mobile styles are listed first as they are the default. So, and a lot of times when we're developing, well, we are probably all the times when we're developing, we're not using a mobile device to do it, right? Because a lot of things we do, you're just not going to be able to do on a mobile device for this course, right? As far as programming as far as our Visual Studio Code and all those things, right? That's not going to work on a mobile. So when we're sitting there testing stuff, we're always using a tablet or a desktop, well, not a tablet even, a desktop computer, or a laptop or a desktop. Can have different screen resolutions, obviously, right? You might have a bigger screen or a smaller screen. But for the most part, we don't really experience the idea that by default, the mobile first is basically your website is set up for mobile, right? But since you're viewing it on like a desktop, or your laptop or your desktop, you're seeing it already adjusted for something different than mobile, right? But the whole mobile first is you create everything for a mobile phone, and then if it's different than that, it's going to adjust based on that. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. So media queries are used to add styles for larger viewports, progressing from tablet to desktop. Styles created for smaller viewports apply to larger viewports by default. Okay. So it's going to be there unless you have something specific, you change it, right? It's going to, by default, if you just made it only for mobile, it's going to look, your desktop view is going to look like your mobile view. But if you've made changes, if you've coded it in a certain way, it's going to look different on a desktop or a tablet, right? So to modify the appearance of an element for a larger viewport, a media query is created for a larger viewport, and then a new style is created. So with so many different tablet sizes, it's difficult to design a one-size-fits-all layout for a tablet device. So with the use of responsive web design and media queries, designing multiple tablet layouts is not required. So basically, because you're going to be building it for screen size, not really thinking about, okay, is this a iPad mini? Is this there's different versions, right, of iPads and different other tablets, right? There could be small screen size tablets, larger screen size tablets. So long time ago, they used to have to really kind of even know the device and stuff like that, right? To be able to do some of this stuff. But, here you can actually use, knowing the screen sizes, basically you're building based on screen size, okay? You're not saying, hey, I'm really building this on a tablet, but tablets do have a certain screen size that when that meets, that's what, computers ain't going to have that size screen. So here, designing for tablet viewports. Okay, I'm just going to show some code on that. All right. Let me see what else is here. All right. Let's just go through this a little bit, and we're going to skip a bunch of stuff here. So page design for a tablet. When designing for a tablet viewport, let's go up here and start, sorry. With so many different tablet sizes, we kind of talked about that. In particular, tablet devices has a viewer small port than the minimum size specified in the media query. The layout will default to the mobile one, okay? Page design for a tablet viewport. When designing for a tablet viewport, maintain the same color scheme, topography, and general look of the website. Website should look the same from viewport to viewport. So you really shouldn't be doing a lot of, sometimes we do it for demonstration purposes, for the class, or, for some exercises, just so you can see, okay, you can tell that it's changing, right? Change the color from this to that. Just, it's more from a demonstration purposes. But in the real world, when you're actually building a, website, you want that website to look the same across different viewports as much as possible. Obviously, when you've got some navigation that extends from, like on a desktop, that extends the whole size of the screen from the desktop, and then on mobile, it's going to be more on a column format, right? That's okay. But you don't want to be changing a lot of colors and moving things too much around if you don't need to. Okay. Um, Navigation design for viewport. It's not necessary to maintain a vertical list of navigation buttons as a tablet screen is larger than a smartphone screen. Okay, yes. Align the navigation buttons in a horizontal line. This frees up space for the main content. So yeah, just basically saying that tablets are usually large enough that you can still have a uh, horizontal navigation as opposed to vertical column based in a on a mobile phone. All right. Um, so designing for desktop viewports. So it's just saying use simple, intuitive navigation, clear images. Yeah. So and sometimes and I think I mentioned this yesterday. Sometimes you've got something really complex. If you got some really complex desktop um, application that like some kind of a dashboard where a lot of stuff's going on. You're seeing a lot of stuff. You can't do that on mobile. So in that case, you may have some different requirements for that mobile. Okay, that you're not going to be able to show everything, or it might be on multiple pages, and there might be a lot more involved. Okay, um, but for more simple type websites, your basic type websites, um, you can kind of make minor adjustments to get it to work on one size viewport as opposed to another size. Let's see. All right, I'm not going to look at that. Modifying breakpoints. Breakpoint is a point at which different styles are applied to a web page depending on the viewport. And we'll go ahead and take a look at that here in just a second. And then here it's just talking about using dynamic pseudo classes, allow changes to the style of a link. So they kind of just, for this chapter, they just kind of jam this into there. I wouldn't necessarily say has really much to do with viewport so much. This is pretty, it can. I shouldn't say that. It does because hovering is different, stuff like that. So there is some correlation. I agree. But pseudo classes can be used on basically anything where you can do for links you can do the active link, right? There's an active link, hover, visit it. So I know everybody's been on a web page before where they've clicked things, and especially something that you've used a lot, that it's kind of a different color. Once you've clicked it and you come back later on, it's a different color. It's because it knows that you visited that before, and so it kind of shows it a different color, and the other ones will be the original color, right? Or it may not even be color. It could be other things as well, underlined or whatever, So, that can be modified based on if it's been is it an active link? Has it been visited? Also, if you hover over it, all that can be customized. Um, so using the dynamic pseudo classes, and I know we already looked at this a little bit even yesterday. So just link, this is an unvisited link, right? Visited, this is a link that has been clicked. Once it's been clicked, obviously if you got rid of all your cache within your browser, meaning your your browser holds on to things, right? So it knows, but you can clear all that stuff out. You clear all that stuff out, it's going to go back to the original, and you'd be back to link on everything, right? But once something's been visited, it kind of holds on to some of that stuff, and the link has been clicked. It knows it's been clicked, and it might be like a different shade of color or whatever. So it's kind of a special feature, nice feature for the user. So oh yeah, I've already clicked on that one. Especially when you've got multiple things on a page. Hover. This link is when the mouse is hovering over it. Active. Active is a link at the moment it is clicked. Okay. Using dynamic. Okay. So, a pseudo class is attached to a selector with a colon to specify the state or relation to the selector, to give the web developer more control of that selector. Okay, we'll go ahead and look at those. I'm not going to just read off of all of that. So it's not necessary to use all the pseudo classes. So here, it's often used in desktop viewport, not used in mobile or tablet, because obviously you don't have a hover and stuff, as they do not have a hover or a click option. True. So yeah, so that's from coding for multiple viewports. Yeah, you don't want that to it's not going to be helpful on a mobile device to have a hover, right? So that is something that you really want. So if you're creating your app to be your website to be mobile first, you wouldn't have a hover, right? You might have, but if you reach a certain breakpoint, then you may introduce that hover, right? Well, actually, it wouldn't even be a tablet either, right? But once you got the desktop level of a size screen, that's where you can kind of introduce your hover, right? Okay, and then also, so the things we're going to kind of be looking at, I'm in the code here in a little bit. We're going to look at some viewports. We're going to look at especially the print part of that as well. And then we're going to go ahead and look at some pseudo classes. And then we're going to go ahead and look at gradients as well. And I know, I think yesterday showed a little bit of the pseudo classes and a little bit of gradient, but we're going to look at a little bit more here. So using gradients, gradient is a gradual transition from one color to another. CSS has two types: linear gradient, which can transition from several different angles. Default transition is from top to bottom. Can also transition up, left, right, or diagonally. And then there's also radiant gradients, and they're specified by their center. Color begins in the center and transitions in a radical direction to another color or colors. So at least two colors must be specified for radical gradients. Okay, I'm not going to do that. So, and we'll look at some examples of this. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at some code here. Okay, let's take a look first here at, let me see what we got. Definitely gradients. And I want to see what I have here. So this is going to be more gradients. Yeah. Okay. So we're just going to look at some gradients here for the most part. Okay. So let's take a look. Let's see what we got here. It'll be very colorful here when we get there. So this is, the whole page is basically responsive design. If you make it smaller, right, it's going to change based on viewport and everything else. No, that's actually not changing there, is it? But okay. Some of it is. Now go down here. This is kind of meant more for desktop stuff. So here's a linear gradient, another linear gradient. Here's a radical one. Okay. So you got different ones here. And as it mentioned before, the radical always starts in the middle, and then goes out from there, and always have to have two colors, right? So here's another repeating radial gradient. And here's a transparency one, where it's very transparent on the left-hand side. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the code for each one. Okay, so the very first one, bottom, that's why. Okay, gradients. So just kind of show you what you're doing. Don't worry too much about this. And actually, this flex stuff, we're gonna look at this. We're gonna probably change things up a little bit as far as what we're doing, following in the book. We did 1, 2, 3, 4. We're on 5 and 6. We're gonna be doing something a little bit different next week, where we're gonna try to introduce some bootstrap stuff, and flex is very important. The book really doesn't cover flex much, but flex is very important. So we're going to spend some time on that as well. So don't worry about this flex stuff here and this gap stuff. We're going to kind of look at that. But I did want to mention what you can do sometimes when it depends on what you're trying to do. But something like where I'm listing multiple gradients here. You can go ahead and have a base class that applies to like multiple classes. Like, this is going to apply to all of these, right? This gradient box. But then we want to do here's a CSS selector for just one specific one, right? These are all different, right? But they first apply the styles of the gradient box, then you're applying an additional style on top of that, right? So here's our gradient box that we're applying. So the first one was the linear horizontal, and it's just basically a linear gradient to right. Okay, let me see if I can actually get this synced up here. Would be beneficial. Okay, so here's our linear one. So it's to right, right? So you're gonna have your full color here, and as you move to the right, it's going to transition to this color, right? These are both hex ones, okay? You can do others as well. You can do, but we're using hex ones here. Here's the linear angle. I don't want to get into too much complicated things. I don't think it's going to ask you to do this on the book. But here, you're starting with this color and you're transitioning over to this color, okay? The radical gradient here, you've got 3 different colors, right? Here you got this bluish color, then kind of a whitish color, and then red. And this just will end up like this. Kind of interesting, huh? Here's a repeating one. Okay. Yeah. So you're basically doing, and yeah, you got pixels here, right? So you're kind of how long you want it to be. So you could change this to say 10 here, and it's going to look a little different over here. All right. I was looking at the wrong one there. Am I not set up here to autosave? I'm not. That's why. So that was 5. If I make this 15, I have to keep coming down here. So see, you'd have to change them all. All right, repeating, this is the repeating one. Circle, you're telling it what kind, a circle. And you can look into all of these. basically, I would just go out to W3 Schools, look up gradient. There's all kinds of different options. I'm not an expert at all these. You know, there's some times you're going to use some things. It's kind of cool looking. It's kind of fun as far as cool looking. How much you're going to use it, maybe it depends on how much you are into design, right? If you're very heavy into the design, you know, you're going to use that a lot more, right? I'm more of a kind of a programmer, a kind of a little bit more of a, I don't want to say hardcore, but I'm more of a, you know, I get more into the programming, the coding part than some of the design stuff. But you can do some really cool things. Fun to play with, right? It's very pretty cool there. But so just different options here. From a design perspective, if you're really into it, go for it. Um, I just don't feel like myself. That's just kind of my knack. But some people are really good at it, and if you are, you should run with it. And here's kind of a transparency one. Okay. Where this is, yeah, it's actually the opposite almost. So let me change this to left. Let me go down there. So our transparency is on the right. So, okay. Okay, let's see if there's anything in here I really want to go over. I don't want to go. We can look at the media screens in the other one. And just real quick, since we're here, let's look at a couple things here. And I want to go out to W3 Schools on this one. Actually, I want to look at this one here. And I'll just type that in there, hit enter. Let's see what it comes back with. List style property. There's lots of different styles available. List style, well, I don't want to get into something that complex here. Didn't really have what I really wanted to look, what I was really wanting there. So basically, it's the same list style none, because by default, you know the unordered list is going to have a list style, right? So that's our navigation here. And if we go back to our screen here for our navigation, you don't have all the underlying stuff, right? You got rid of that, right? Their navigations, if you would have not had that, let's just go take a look real quick. What happens if you don't, if you remove that completely? So you're going to have your little, you're going to have your little things here for each one, just like we've done other lists, right? So if you ever use like an unordered list, ordered list, or anything like that, you have to really you have to do something like this so it will, you get rid like here, you get rid of all the bullets, right? The other thing I kind of wanted to go through, I'm sure this is going to do a little better. Maybe I just kind of grabbed the wrong thing here. Styling list, unordered list, bullets, list items. But display. Let's look at display. So display has different options. Let's see what they have here. So you got inline displays an element as an inline element. Block displays an element as a block element. So if you remember, like a block element, as far as a page is concerned, a block element. So kind of your block elements is like a div tag. All of those are block level elements. When you use like a div tag, it's going to take up that whole line, right? There's others like a span tag is an inline, and it's only going to be just within that, whatever you have within the content, wherever you have the begin and end tag of a span tag, what's in the middle of that, that's going to be an inline. It's only going to stay there. You can have multiple spans all in one row. For a div tag, if every time you do a div tag, it's going to be a block element. Not that you can't kind of control that with some other some other style sheet stuff to do some special things and maybe have a divs next to each other, but it takes, you have to do a lot more to make that happen. But by default, a block element, a block one is all display blocks always. I'm just saying an element that's a display that it's a block element like a div tag is always going to take up that whole row. And then if you put another one, it's going to be on the next row, right? So here's the different ones: inline, block, contents. What's the ones that are probably most popular? It's inline. Block is very popular. Inline. Remember, I was just kind of showing you we had that flex. Flex is for like flex box stuff, and we're going to look at that later, like probably next week a little bit. Grid. I want to still do a video on grids for you. Okay, display grid. We have inline block here. So this displays an element as an inline level block container. Okay, and the other one is none. So them are your options here. And none is it's not going to show it at all. We're going to look at that here in a minute. Again, we did this before. I think I showed you this yesterday. But for our print stuff, we're going to say, hey, we don't even want to print this stuff. So we can take and do a display none on anything that's in that page. We can say display none and it won't show, right? All right. Is there anything else? Text align. Text align is always about centering your text on the page. So you got a footer, and you want that footer, you want that text in that footer. You use text align on that, so it'll be in the center of your page. So for links, text decoration. So by you doing text decoration here, if you have text decoration by default, a link is going to be underlined. If you do text decoration none, it will get rid of that underline. I know we've done a little bit of this already, but just kind of want to mention a few things. And then obviously we did the border radius. I looked at that and already a little bit about using that border radius so you can do the rounded corners, right? And that was those content boxes right here, rounded corners, by using the border radius. Then obviously you can also have a border on that. So once I do that, you can see the border's a lot thicker. And also for going forward here, when you're doing just for debugging purposes, trying to figure out, borders are a great tool. Obviously, the Google Developer Tools is really good, but I know it can be a little bit overwhelming using that. So it is beneficial to sometimes also just kind of like put a border around something. Like, I don't know why, where is this? And you got different things on the page, and it's sometimes hard to understand with the spacing where something starts and ends, even though it shows you think it ends there. It could be like, this here, this doesn't really, this is where this ends, right? So, sometimes putting borders on things kind of helps you sometimes with doing that, I do it for debugging purposes. Put a border on there. Obviously, you want to put a border you're going to see, maybe like a black border, or and as long as it's not black, here wouldn't work, right? Very well, but so all of this kind of stuff, you had a black border, you're going to see everything around there, right? Um, so right here, right? So that way you see black. So, here, not a big deal. But as you move forward here and you really start having to try to position things, using borders sometimes very beneficial for debugging purposes. Okay. All right. So next I want to go ahead and look at some other code here. So here, let's go take a look at this screen. Close that. Let's close some of the stuff out. Okay, let's make sure that this works. I kind of redid a couple things. So this is kind of your desktop view, right? Not a lot on here, but this is your desktop view. This is a gradient here, actually. This is a desktop view with some navigation. Obviously, you make it smaller, and it's going to transition to column-based, right? Column-based vertical for mobile devices. So let's take another look at that. Let's do that again. I know I did this yesterday, but so just to see it change and transition. Here, first, let's go look at our number here in our. Let's look at our number here in our file. And I'm talking about our screen size. So for styles here, min width of 768, right? So this is our desktop viewport styles. So just to kind of reiterate a little bit, so you can build your CSS, your regular CSS, not in you don't have to use you don't necessarily, if you do mobile first, if your plan is to do mobile first, then you just do all your CSS as if it's a mobile phone. Don't even worry about anything bigger than that. Test it as something really small, right? But then if you're wanting to add for bigger screens, that's where you would say, okay, if the minimum width, this is for a desktop, if the minimum width is 768, then we're going to make some changes, right? We're going to make some changes. So it's going to be 768. So let's go ahead and get here and do F12. And I know this is always challenging, even for myself. Oh, well, we don't have to look at the stuff over there. We're good here. So basically you've got, if you're mobile first, there's mobile. I'm going to see what that does there. So here's basically your mobile screen, a very small one. As you keep going, we know what the number is, right? 768. There we go. Once we get to 769, and you can just come in here and, stop it a little bit short and see, right? And you can see it transition there. Okay. Do want to mention also in here, there's also options to look at things from a different, kind of different devices. It already has this is all within Chrome, Chrome Developer Tools. So if you've got an iPhone XR, this is what size it's going to be, all right? So it's already here. Just a quick way to do that. If you're testing different phones, here's the 12 Pro is 390, iPad Air, 820 width, right? Starting. So you got all these different options you can look at. It's great. You know, long time ago, we didn't have things like this. So this is a uh, very useful tool for development purposes. Um, we got iPad Mini here, right? So iPad Mini 768. So I didn't even know all of them. You can't sit there and make these a different size though, right? You'll have to come back here and just do responsive if you're wanting to play with this. This is responsive, you're changing it. If you select a certain one, it's going to kind of lock you there, right? So you need to, if you ever play around with this, if you're wanting to change the size of the screen dynamically, you'll have to make sure you have it as responsive so you can change the number, or just use a little, drag it to make it smaller or larger. Okay. So let's go ahead and close this out. And I know this is sometimes challenging to find and stuff. So this is going to be under styles, right? If you're at compute, oh, this is showing all the time, which is good. All right. All right. Now I want to show you print. Okay. So here is our page. All right. Here's our page. Let's go look at our code here for a minute. Let's just make this big. Make sure I got the right one here. Yes. So what we're doing here, I need to check something here real quick. Okay, we're doing print for the print.css. That's fine. So here we're using a print. We're using it right here within our style sheet, where we link our style sheet. And we're saying for media print, we want to do print CSS. So we go to print CSS. Here's our font family, color, background. It's doing a little bit of changing of some things. Okay, a little different. And probably this is an important one that for a print you probably might want to change, because some fonts are much better to look on a screen, but when you print it out, it's not always the best one. There's some more print friendly type font families that you probably should be using. And then also, if you've got special colors on your screen, if you're using a black background on your screen, you may not want to have that for printing purposes that way, because then it's going to print all this, this big box of black, and you're using up a lot of ink, right? So you're using up a lot of ink to do that, so you could actually flip the colors in that case, right? That's a good reason to change colors. Sometimes change colors, because earlier I said, you don't want to change, for fun, you don't really want to change colors. Just for demonstration purposes, it's good. But this is for print. This is a very good reason. Usually between different devices, just for screen level looking at it, you don't really want to change around colors. But for print, this is a point where if you've got a background that's really dark, you don't want to use all that ink. You're going to be using a lot of ink. You just have a white background. You don't have to worry about it using all that ink, right? So you may want to flip some colors, change some colors, right? So in this case, when we do a print, it's going to go ahead and display none. Okay, and a text decoration of A links is going to be none. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. I think our text declaration is already none, but that's okay. We should see our footer should not display at all. This is just kind of an example. Okay, maybe you still want to show your footer, but in this case, it's going to display none on the footer. So let's go take a look at that. So down here, we've got our footer, it's just this copyright, not much, right? So you got that copyright. If you come in here, okay, and up here at the three dots, you may not do this very often as far as printing, but you can go to the three dots and go down here to print, okay? Now I have mine so we can see it instead of, it will show, display it over here. I was just checking something here. What was going to happen? Okay. But, you know, sometimes I even save as PDF too. But so that's all like one. So as you can see, since we had that there, right? We don't have our footer at all. And also, I was kind of incorrect in saying that. So we got my responsive website, right? So we changed some cut. Let's see what else we changed. We got rid of all of this altogether, right? So I was kind of mistaken on that a little bit. So our text decoration none hid that. I question that, but that's okay. It might be done. Let me look at something else here. It might be in here. Yeah. See, it can become confusing sometimes, especially when you've got styles for your desktop viewport. So here it's doing all these styles if it's a screen, right? It's going to do all these if it's a screen, right? It's going to do all of these if it's a screen. Well, here you care about size. The only difference between this one and this one is size, right? So it's going to show this display inline for all of those things, right? You have those links and stuff. But if you don't, yep, inline block. But if you are using print, it's not anything that's defined in here won't be in your print at all, right? So, but the biggest thing we did change here is the footer display none, right? Display none on the footer. This did change the background color to white, the color to black for the text, background color to white. Change the font family, and did a display none on the footer, and for the I don't think there's any A tags there, but display text coloration decoration none. So the biggest thing you can tell the footer is gone. So let's just, for the heck of it here, let's comment this out. And it's just complaining because you've got something defined and you're not, you didn't really add any styles here, so there's just kind of a warning. It's an empty rule set is what it is. So let's come back here. Is this save? Auto save, yes. Okay, and we refresh this. So this could be normal. Now if we go over here and do the print, file print, and we take a look at this, there's your copyright. Okay, and actually it's showing all this as well, right? It's showing all this as well. And maybe I was just looking at this wrong. Let me go back here. I'm sorry. So let's put that back the way it was. Let's do this one more time. Print. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I haven't seen it work like that. It seems a little strange that based on that change of just that footer, maybe, you know what? I'm wondering if it's treating that as a true error here. Let's just get rid of this. Oh, navigation. I'm sorry. I didn't even see it. I was thinking footer also has navigation here, right? It has navigation there. So basically this is saying don't display the navigation and don't display the footer. I apologize there. I was wondering why that navigation was there. So yeah, so basically if you're printing, don't do the navigation, don't do the footer, right? All right. So we kind of looked at the print CSS. Were you actually using a separate print CSS file? And And just the easiest way, I guess, is basically for the print. Print doesn't matter. Screen sizes isn't going to matter for print, right? Screen sizes shouldn't matter for print, right? So for print, you can just use the media equals print and have a print CSS. That way you don't necessarily need to, and that way you can keep it separate as well. The other way is obviously like in the style CSS, you can do media only print, right? You could do print, and then everything we did before, you can just include, the things to display none. You can just add that to this, right? If you have this as print, right? But this is a lot cleaner. Just doing media print, having a separate one for print, a lot easier to understand, a lot cleaner of a solution. All right. So that's all I really have here on this. Please let me know if you have any questions. I will do, like I said before, I will do a little separate video on the grid that I'll probably get that done like tomorrow. And so then if there's anything else, please let me know. Have a good day.